Why? Why the fifth film? Why? Why? Let's just get this over with. What's up, guys? Jake here, and welcome to my first ever movie review / rant on Ice Age Collision Course. So before we get into this review / rant, for those who haven't seen this movie, I highly suggest you to click away this video because there's going to be spoilers in this review / rant, so get out of you if you haven't seen it. But if you have seen this movie, then I guess enjoy this review / rant. So, Ice Age Collision Course, not directed by Michael Furmeyer and Steve Martino, but this time directed by Michael Furmeyer, returning from directing from Ice Age Continental Drift, and it tells a story about when Scrat's Acorn sends an asteroid to Earth. The herd must find a way to stop the asteroid from hitting Earth with the help of a returning friend. So that's it for the plot of this movie. Now let's get on to my thoughts on this movie. So yeah. Now, I remember watching this movie back when I was a kid, and I've heard of this announcement back in 2015, and when I heard that announcement, I was like, why? Why? Why do we need a fifth movie? The fourth movie had a decent ending, and the third one had a perfect ending of the franchise, but why do we need another one? Why? But it better be the final one, because I'll be so upset for more if it gets even more for Ice Age. So yeah, and I have watched the movie and rewatched it with one of my friends on Instagram, and guess what? I'm mixed with this movie, and that's why we're gonna have to talk about this movie for today. So let's get started. Alright, so I'm gonna have to start with the good qualities, and then we'll get on to the bad qualities. So yeah. Alright, so first off, the animation alongside with the visuals are beautiful to look at, and is an improvement from the previous 4 Ice Age movies, despite the overuse of disgustingly purple color filters throughout the movie and the movement being too fast in certain scenes. Like, why do we need those scenes so fast in some scenes? That doesn't make any sense, man. So yeah. Well, the voice acting for this movie, it was decent. Partially due to most of the cast returning to reprise their roles. Even the new cast, like Adam Devine, Stephanie Beatrice, Jesse Tyler Ferguson, Max Greenfield, Jesse J, and Nick Offerman. They were decent choices for the movie. So yeah, well, Peaches, Diego, and Shira are the only likable characters in this movie, along with Brooke and Teddy, who, while poorly written, are tolerable compared to everyone else, while Peach's storyline with Julian do revolve around with cliches, all she intends to do to survive the incoming asteroid and live her happily married life with him. A far better motivation than the rest of the other characters, even if it causes her to get a little annoying at times. Peaches is also significantly more mature here than she was in the previous film. She is also right about Manny and Ellie's attitude, since she is already an adult and she decides what to do with her life. And also, Roger, while annoying, at least has some common sense, unlike his father and sister. So yeah, even though it was poorly executed, Sid finding a love interest is a pretty good concept, especially how nobody in his biological family but Granny loved or even cared about him, and this could have been his chance to start a better family for himself, which it might make sense to me, to be honest. So yeah. Well, the soundtrack from John Debney, it was decent, despite being the weakest in the franchise, as stated before. So yeah. Well, the Figaro sequence in this movie, it's very enjoyable. I like that sequence, to be honest. And yes, I remember that song before. So yeah, there are some scenes here and there are worthy of a lap, such as when Scrat is about to smash one of the remaining teleportation devices with his acorn, right when he is teleported to the bathroom, which that was hilarious, to be honest. At which he unintentionally throws his acorn, the one thing that was so valuable to him, everything he stood for, into an actual toilet, which I like that scene. It was hilarious to me. So yeah, like in the previous 4 movies, the designs for all the characters are incredibly beautiful to look at, and is an improvement to those character designs from the previous 4 movies. So yeah, well, there are some emotional scenes in the movie, particularly the one with Manny and Julian struggling to get the biggest crystal to land into the volcano, and they allowed it to roll into a said volcano on its own, as well as the scene where Manny and Ellie, believing that all hope to save the Earth from the meteor was gone, reflect on the life they've spent together and how they wish Peaches could have lived a life like that with Julian, which it makes a lot of sense to me, to be honest. So yeah. Alright, so that's it for the good qualities. Now let's get on to the bad qualities on why it's an absolute collision course. So one of the main problems of the movie is that it barely has any originality, with several scenes, characters, and concepts either being heavily cliched or rehashed from the other films. Granted, this can be executed well. Even Star Wars, of all things, was influenced by the Hidden Fortress, plot-wise. But here, they tend to feel quite hollow and unsatisfying. And even aside from that, cliches do tend to be repetitive and tiring, which, why would they do this lazy, stupid concept? Do something original for an Ice Age movie or something else. God, this is why Fox or Disney is trying to ruin Ice Age. I'm starting to hate that. So yeah, according to an interview, Collision Course was inspired by a scene in the first Ice Age film where the herd and Roshan the baby are walking inside an ice cavern, during which a UFO was briefly shown encased within ice. This alone reinforces the lack of originality the film has. In fact, this feels as true the filmmakers had run out of ideas. God, they need to come up with something really good and interesting things from the first one, or like the previous Ice Age movies. They need to come up with something really good, man. Stop being lazy and stuff like that. So yeah, it should be noted that Dawn of the Dinosaurs was similarly based on a shot during the sequence in which a Tyrannosaurus Rex is shown encased in ice. However, this one works since it does have to do with the Ice Age time period. God, it doesn't make any sense, man. So yeah, the basic concept of Scrat trying to get his acorn is tired and overused, especially considering how it has been done over and over again for the past 4 films until this point. As such, the audience pretty much acknowledged by now that Scrat will not succeed in getting his acorn, and here it does feel kind of predictable. Seriously, why does Scrat trying to failing of getting the acorn. Seriously, let him have the acorn, man. This is so stupid. I hated this. One might compare this to most Looney Tunes and Tom and Jerry shorts, but at least those were executed in a much better way in comparison to the storyline with Scrat here in Collision Course. So yeah, like the previous film, it for one exaggerates the cartoony gags with his shenanigans. At one point, Scrat was skinned alive like a skeleton or something by the high gravity of the ship and fixed himself like it was nothing. Really? Really, man? This was stupid. I hated this. The subplot of Manny not only being emotionally over clingy toward Peaches to the point where he refuses to let her leave and explore, but also seeming to dislike and refuse to do anything to do with Julian, her fun-loving fiance, who is reasonably nice. And it's basically a carbon copy of that of Hotel Transylvania, which I did a review on it. If you want to go check it out, that review, go ahead. And it doesn't make any sense. I don't like when they copy one of my mixed movies that I've ever seen for Hotel Transylvania. Why would they rip off to that? God, I hate it. The film overall suffers from the heroes embark to save the world from impending doom cliche, which, bruh, we've seen this before. Why do we hear save the world again for the heroes? Why do we need this again? We've seen that before. God, this is too much. In addition, it completely rehashes the plot of The Meltdown and Continental Drift, the second and fourth movies of Ice Age, of the heroes embarking on an adventure as they struggle to survive in a claustrophobic disaster, and the main character, who in this is Sid, gets a love interest. Really? Why do we need this again for the third time in a row? We've seen this for about 2 times, and now we're getting a third time in a row? Really? This is so stupid, lazy, and dumb. God. Well, Manny is not only, essentially, has the over-clingy father cliche for the second time in a row, but also has the father who hates his star boyfriend cliche. Really? Are you doing this like Hotel Transylvania, like Drac hates Johnny from his daughter Mavis? Really? Why would you try to rip off from that? God. There's one sequence which I'm not going to show that, sorry. Near the end of the first act revolves around the forgotten anniversary cliche, which, why do we need that, man? Why, man? Well, Peaches has the grown-up character who wants to see the world. Seriously? Really? Really, man? Why do we need who wants to see the world? I've seen that a few times before, and now we're having this in this movie? They're so lazy at writing, man. I hated it. Well, Sid has the loser who gets the girl cliche. Like, why? It doesn't make any sense. I know I like the concept of Sid getting a girlfriend, but why this? It doesn't make any sense. And also, Julian has the future son-in-law who is trying his best cliche, which turns out in this movie, he failed sometimes because he is so freaking annoying to cause you to shut the heck up for him. He needs to stop. God. And also, by the way, Buck has the wire revealed cliche. Are you kidding me? Why do we need the wire revealed cliche? I've did this before in Hotel Transylvania, Transformania, and now this. God, I hated when they do this every time with the wire reveal. Every time. They need to stop that. God. And another thing, Gavin, Gertie, and Roger all have redeemed in the end cliche. Really? Really, man? I thought they're gonna redeem halfway to the ending of the movie, but turns out they're gonna do it like this at the end of the movie. Why? They should do this halfway of the movie. Why? Man, the film has the ominous and ancient prophecy about something's coming cliche. I've heard of this before, and now we're having this. They're getting lazy for this development. I hated those writers before. And it also has the ending with a party around which everyone dances to a song cliche, which it's actually a pop song that I realize, which it doesn't make any sense. They're doing this like Ice Age Continental Drift and Shrek 2 ripping off for that and putting it in a movie like that. Why would you rip off for Shrek and Shrek 2 and put it in a movie? Why would you do that? God! Well, the story, there is no story. Why? Because it tends to be rather predictable, as it's obvious the herd will succeed in stopping the asteroid from hitting the Earth and eradicating the planet of its life forms. Thus, it becomes a bit difficult to become emotionally invested in a story due to its outcome being quite obvious. And it's just the herd trying to save the Earth from hitting the meteor or asteroid from being extinct, which it doesn't make any sense. Why would they do this? God. Even though the animation is a step up from the previous 4 films, it can be over the top with its movement, being way too fast in specific scenes, and usually acts and feels as true it is the kind of animation style used in the production of Hotel Transylvania film. This is also even more jarring when taking into consideration as to how most of the non-scrat animals in the previous 4 films move quite similarly to animals in real life. Like, why would they use this animation style like that in a Hotel Transylvania, man? Use a different animation style to inspire by another movie that you want to do, man. Use a different one, man. God, I hated this. On a similar topic, there is an overuse of disgustingly purple color filters and scenes throughout the film, notably inside the UFO, scenes set during the evening on the asteroid and its pieces themselves, and even inside Geotopia. Like, why would they use purple color filters? Use different colors or something to fit the movie well, man. God. It follows up on one of the flaws of Continental Drift suffered from in that it scarcely feels like an Ice Age film at times, mainly due to its usage of things which feel rather out of place in an Ice Age film. In fact, it feels more like an entirely different movie, but happens to have characters and settings from the Ice Age franchise. Like, why would they do this? They should do something different for this. Not this, man. God. The film feels the apparent need to be hip and cool, seemingly to pander to 2010's audiences. This is obvious in scenes with dated references to 2010's popular culture, which feels as true they fail to fit in with the time period the films are set in. Blatant examples of this include Crash and Eddie constantly referencing hashtags in one scene. Like, why would they say hashtag? God, stop using those hashtags. It's used in social media, man. And another scene, as well as Francine criticizing Sid for looking nothing like his profile picture. Really, Francine? Why would you criticize him as nothing like his profile picture? Profile pictures are used in Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Stop mentioning some social media stuff or references in the movie. Stop that. Use something different. God. It features 5 rather and pointless cameos from Neil deGrasse Tyson, who also rarely serves as a scientific consultant for an Ice Age film. Really? Why would they put Neil deGrasse Tyson in a movie? Why would they do this? The narration for this movie, this felt like it's out of place. This movie should do an opening without the narration. That would work instead. So yeah. Well, the pillar itself, which describes the prophecy alongside with UFOs, magical crystals that grant eternal youth, and other sci-fi and fantasy elements, all feel rather out of place in a series revolving around prehistoric animals, which it doesn't make any sense to me. This would essentially be what would happen if there would be another sequel to Finding Nemo in which the characters embark on an adventure in outer space of all things, which we could get this because that would make sense if we can have another sequel after Finding Dory, but this time in space, not in Ice Age. We want another sequel of Finding Dory. If not, then that will be fine. If that happens, then I will be so happy for this. So yeah. Now, one could argue that there was a shot in the first Ice Age movie where a UFO is shown encased in ice, but this was not exactly a major focus of the said film and seemed to be more of an in-joke, and even the none of the previous movie had storylines that were majority either sci-fi themed or fantasy themed. I thought they're gonna do this like the first one, but instead, they placed it in an opening outside of the ice cavern, which, why would they do this? They should put it in an ice cavern instead. God. There is a presence of out-of-place cartoonish sound effects throughout the film. The most pointed example of this being when cartoonish squawking sound effects are inappropriately plopped into a brief scene where a series of asteroids are literally annihilating a flock of birds. Seriously, why would they put the squawking sound effects into a scene for asteroids eliminating a flock of birds? Why would they do this? They should put a different sound effect instead. God. Like the previous movie, some of the song choices are rather questionable for an Ice Age film, with blanket examples including Fireball by Pitbull briefly playing during the first interaction in the film between Buck and the herd, as well as Dreamweaver by Gary White playing when Brooke meets Sid for the first time. Seriously, why would they put those songs that it doesn't belong in those scenes? They should put a different song that should be perfect for those scenes. Even though I like Pitbull, but still, God, they should put a different song, man. In a scene where Crash and Eddie are inside Buck's mind, there's literally a robot version of the latter. Even though robots are pretty much non-existent in the time period the films are set in, especially considering how no such human technology existed yet at the point. It is also even more bizarre when taking into consideration as to how Buck should be unfamiliar with robots for obvious reasons. Really? Why would they put a robot in Buck's mind? Robots doesn't exist in the Ice Age. It only exists in a future, actually. Stop putting modern technology in a movie. God, they're so dumb. Unlike in the previous 4 films, Scrat never loses his acorn in the ending. Neither it ends with him screaming. Really? Why would they do this for the 5th time? We've already heard this for 4 times, and now we're having for 5 times? Seriously, let Scrat have the acorn and let him have peace. God, you're gonna torture him. They're so stupid. This movie feels rather over stuff when it comes to the characters, and as a result, the plot constantly has to sidetrack with the subplots. Really? Why would you sidetrack with the subplots? God, this is getting ridiculous for this. Similar to the fourth installment or the sequel to Rio, the film is very saturated since it has not 4 or 6, but 24 subplots. The most unfortunate thing is that it juggles each one of them, that at the end of all, only 2 subplots are executed properly. These subplots include Manny and a pack seek to stop the asteroid, Scrat on his journey through space in order to search the acorn, Sid depressed about having a girlfriend, Manny and Ellie with their dilemma that Peaches is getting married, the romance between Peaches and Julian trying to befriend Manny, Julian's relationship with the pack, Diego and Shira are looking to have children, Sid's romance with Brooke, the pack celebrates the anniversary of Manny and Ellie, Manny forgets his anniversary with Ellie, Buck trying to stop the prophecy from coming true, Buck leading the pack to the volcano, the pack that seeks to steal the pink crystals of Geotopia, Buck tending the pumpkin, Buck with his existential trance on how to avoid the asteroid, the Dino Birds getting revenge on Buck, Buck prevents the pack from knowing that the Dino Birds are after them, Shangri-La Llama and the inhabitants of Geotopia refuse to save the world, the secret of Geotopia's Fountain of Youth, the surrender of Shangri-La Llama and the inhabitants of Geotopia, Sid's grandmother affair with Teddy, the Dinobots' plan to save themselves from the asteroid, and Roger's insecurity about being evil. Are you freaking kidding me? 24 freaking subplots. Why? This is too many subplots. Do only 2 subplots, not a lot. God, just only 2, man. God. In fact, one brief scene in the movie with Sid running out of fingers when he counts everyone to ensure they are present even takes a jab at the movie's huge list of characters. Really? Why is he out of fingers? I know why, because he doesn't have a lot of fingers. He only has 4 or 5, I think, because there's a lot of characters, man. This is too much. This is getting ridiculous. Well, the characters, they are even more intolerable than they were in Concept of Drift. Each of them having their own set of issues, including, but not limited to, Scrat is ruined as a character altogether. He seems to be the antagonist, as he is not only responsible for the catastrophe, but also causes a storm on Jupiter to end up on Earth, pushes the asteroid headed towards the Earth further during his attempt to return, and literally eradicates all life on Mars. This could be compared to his actions in Concept of Drift, but at least that did not have the potential to eradicate all life on Earth. Are you kidding me? Why would you make him becoming like a villain? He is not the villain for the franchise. He is just a minor character. Stop making him like a villain. There's just dumb writers, man. I hate those writers in this movie. In addition, the scale of his antics is up to such an absurd degree, his comedic nature is tarnished, and Scrat is also affirmed as the equivalent of God, the latter of which is mainly due to how he is responsible for the creation of the entire solar system. In fact, his antics seems to be even more over the top and absurd in comparison to especially in Continental Drift. Really? Why would you make him like the equivalent of God? Like I said, he's just a minor character. Stop making him whatever he wants to be. God, they're just stupid. And also, Manny has been reduced from a slightly standoffish but lovable grump to a whiny and mopping jerk. Basically, he has been frienderized as a character. He even has a psychotic line of, "Ooh, I know, we destroyed the relationship, right? That we never had to let her go, and she'll just stay our world go forever." While sadistically laughing, almost reaching modern Peter Griffin's level, even Ellie points that out. The way he acts in this film is also pointless and senseless, considering that he already reconciled with Peaches and accepts the fact that she wants independence and was also likable in the Great Escapade. Thankfully, he reverts back to his first 3-film self in the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, which it's a good thing, which I'll review it next after this review/rant. So yeah, but why? Why would you make him look like a modern Peter Griffin, man? He is not like a modern Peter Griffin. He's just a lovable grump who cares about his family, his wife, and his daughter. Why would you make him look like that? God, this is why I don't like the writers in the movie when they make the characters friendalized. Sid is also friendalized similarly to in Continental Drift, his stupidity having been exaggerated in comparison to in the first 3 films. Really? You put Sid friendalized in the movie and make him stupid? He is not stupid. He is just a friend of Manny and Diego. Get your together, man. Sorry if I cussed, cause I just want to say that to the writers. Hope you understand that. So yeah, Ellie, who acts completely out of character, since instead of being Manny's voice of reason, and Peach's sweet mother, who accepts and supports her desire to explore and meet new people, as she was in The Meltdown, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, A Mammoth Christmas, Continental Drift, and The Great Escapade. She was frienderized into a manipulative mother who lacks any interesting characterizations by simply siding with Manny on his over-clinky attitude towards Peaches, and at another to set up the Force Forgotten Anniversary plot point that is resolved as quickly as it shows up. Thankfully, like Manny, she reverts back to her 2nd to 4th films self in the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, which, like I said, it's a good thing that they revert her back that we all know and love. But really, why would you turn her into a manipulative mother? She is not a manipulative mother, man. She is just a loving mother who cares about his husband, Manny, and his daughter, Peaches. Why would you make her like that? God, this is getting ridiculous. Several returning characters, especially Diego and Shira, both of whom were major characters in the previous films, while still likable and not friendalized, are heavily sidelined and barely do anything to move the plot forward. The underutilization of Diego is even more insulting because Diego was one of the original main characters of the series. Similarly, another character, Lewis from Continental Drift, is reduced to nothing more than a background character who barely appears in 2 shots, which, this is, God, I hated this. Why would you make Lewis into a background character? I know why, because the actor Josh Gad was not returning due to scheduling conflicts, that's why. But I would love to see more of Lewis, man. Why would you reduce him into a background character? It doesn't make any sense. And second of all, Why would you make Diego and Shira frienderize? Why would you do this? God, I hate this. In addition to other characters like Crash and Eddie, they are very annoying in this movie, as most of their scenes consist of them spewing out horrendous dialogue and rather unfunny attempts at humor. They hardly even work off of the other members of the herd properly. While Crash and Eddie were meant to annoy the other characters with their Bart Simpson-like pranks and intelligence, their annoyance wasn't exaggerated in the meltdown and Dawn of the Dinosaurs. Not to mention that they were at least good friends, as they cared about Ellie and the main trio and always helped them out when they could. But in Continental Drift, and here, it seems like the movie viewers are the target of the possum's annoyance, rather than the other characters making them unbearable. Not to mention, they are useless since instead of worrying about their friends and the possible deaths by the asteroid, in any moment of the flood, in a meltdown, were they playing, having, or making fun of the situation? No. Making this out of character for them, their stupidity was also exaggerated, evolving from Bart Simpson in Season 1, 15 through 31 present intelligence to a Patrick Star in Season 6 through 8 intelligence. Even Sean William Scott and Josh Peck's performance comes across as annoying, as while they're still doing decent jobs as always, for some reason, they put in a much goofier register to do their voices and even use their southern accents and higher pitches, which is more irritating and funny. Really? Why would they put Crash and Eddie to southern accents? Bro, why would they put him like this? And why would they put him like from Patrick Star Season 6 through 8? Why would they do this? They are not so stupid. They are not just annoying. They're just good friends of Ellie and the pack, which they just care about them, the trio, and friends. God, why would they made up like this? They just went frienderized. I hate those writers so much. Peaches, while likable and much more mature than in a previous film, can get annoying at times because of how much she complains about the possibility of not surviving to marry Julian and live her life, even though it's kinda understandable since that's a very scary thought. Really? Why would she complain in this movie? She needs to calm down and deal with it. God, I hated this. Granny was also frienderized, as she went from a crazy but conscious grandma that genuinely loved Sid and cared about her friends to just a senile old lady. At one point, after the herd got out of an electric storm, she doesn't even care about Buck possibly dying when he came back to rescue baby, easily moving on from it. Really? Why would just put her to a useless senile old lady? She only cares about Sid and her friends. Why would they put her like this? God. And speaking of the character, Buck, he went from a fun and enjoyable comic relief to one of the most intolerable characters in the whole franchise. Everything that made him charming and funny in the third film is now all thrown away when the film takes his crazy attitude way too far, as he tags along with the herd to find a way to stop the meteors. His over-the-top wacky nature just dominates a good chunk of the movie, and now he supplies the worst jokes of the movie, along with Crash and Eddie, as well as constantly spewing out exposition, plus the fact that his humor only works when he is in the jungle in a lost world. So bringing him to the icy surface wasn't a very good idea. And on the top of that, Instead of being treated like the Jack Sparrow of Ice Age, he is now turned into a Tony Stark clone when he knows everything about space. And even has a freaking robot on his mind, which I already talked about this already, man. Along with the fact that he is the leader of trying to make the movie as cartoony as possible. But now it becomes too cartoony to the point that it's more unbearable than fun. Really? Why would you make him like a ripoff to Tony Stark? Bro, he is the Jack Sparrow of the Ice Age. Why would you make him like a ripoff from Tony Stark? You know Tony Stark is from Marvel, man. Please just stop ripping off and inspire to rip off someone else, man. I hated it. The characters introduced here in Collision Course either barely have any personality, are forgettable, unfunny, one-dimensional, or in the cases of Roger, Shangar Lama, and Julian, annoying. In addition, Julian, Francine, and the Dino Birds never receive a proper introduction as to how they came into the other character lives. We just randomly start off with them from the beginning to an end, as if they just came out of thin air, which is jarring. Really? Why would you not let the new characters have a proper introduction? Give them a proper introduction. We need to know who the character or the new character is. God, just give them a new introduction or just an introduction, man. On the topic of Brooke, while not unlikable or annoying like almost anybody else, is overall a one-dimensional love interest who simply falls for Sid, which, for that character, it felt like it's forgettable, and it felt like it's not interesting to me for that character. Sorry, guys. The Dino Birds are forgettable antagonists, with lame motives consisting of them intending to fly out of range as high into the atmosphere as possible as the asteroid hits and eradicates all other life forms, making it impossible to take them seriously when the audience know their own idiocy is only going to result in their own deaths. And even if they do survive the initial collision, there will barely be any food for them to eat, which would result in them starving to death. In fact, the presence of a real antagonist is rendered redundant by the fact that the asteroid is basically the main threat of the movie. Really? Why would you make the Dino Birds antagonists? Why would they do this? They're just forgettable and not interesting. And designs for the Dino Birds, they look hideous. I hated those designs, except for Roger. I like the design, actually. But the two other Dino Birds, they're just hideous. I hated those designs. They look like the Cats' nightmarish designs from the movie Cats and the ugly Sonic design from the Sonic movie trailer, actually. In fact, there are at least two scenes where the film is self-aware of how stupid their motives are, which, why would they show their motives, which they're stupid, man. It doesn't make any sense. Julian is basically just a mammoth version of Johnny from Hotel Transylvania, but without any Johnny's likability or charisma. Even Adam Devine, although he does a decent job, seems to be trying to impersonate Annie Samberg's voice. And on top of the fact that he never received a proper introduction on how he became part of the herd's lives. His presence alone makes the whole love triangle subplot between Peaches, Lewis, and Ethan in Concept of Drift even more pointless than it already was. Really? Why would you make a rip-off version of Johnny? You know, Johnny's from Hotel Transylvania, which I did a review on it. If you want to go check it out, go ahead. Why would you mix them together into a character like Johnny or trying to rip off Johnny? Just try to do a character inspired by someone that you wanted to do or something that you wanted to add in. So yeah, at one point, the Herd and Buck come across a river, and at no point does anyone think it to be a good idea to cross it to the point where Buck literally demands said river to let his mammals pass. Sure, it's just a reference to the story of Moses, but it paints the characters in a really idiotic way. Really? Why would you try to rip off a reference to the story of Moses? Or trying to do a scene from The Prince of Egypt, which I've seen that movie, actually. It's one of my favorites. Why would you try to rip off of that? This looks just stupid. Do something, a scene, something original, man. God. Specific scenes in the film are rather pointless and seem to only serve to pad out the length, as neither of them serve any real purpose in the story at all, nor even explores the relationships between the characters in a way it pays off story-wise. One example is the small subplot of Diego and Shira wanting to raise children, which it does nothing to move the plot, which it doesn't make any sense to me. It does not move the plot forward, and seems to be only there for the sake of having both characters actually getting to do something in the film. Really? We just wanted them to see that they wanted to have their children, but instead they wanted to do something that they wanted to do, which it's stupid. I want to see their own children or something in the future, hopefully. But it doesn't make any sense to me. God. Even the side of the story with Scrat falls prey to this, with some of his individual scenes seemingly being longer than in the previous films, seemingly for the sake of paddling out of running time. Really? Why would you give Scrat's scenes this long? Give us some short scenes, or give us some gags, or shenanigans or something. Give us some short scenes for Scrat. Not just long scenes for Scrat. Give us short ones instead, man. God. There's a plot hole in the movie. In one scene where Scrat causes the internal gravity of the UFO to decrease, inadvertently flattening him and rendering it impossible for him to do specific actions such as jumping, and the next time he is shown the gravity of the UFO has somehow returned to normal without any explanation why. Really? Why would you make it just quick? It doesn't make any sense. Stop making it rushed. Just show it how it got the gravity removed without Scrat being flat, and let him be normal again. God, let Scrat see what happened for that scene. God. The pacing during the travel is very inconsistent, with the filmmakers seemingly being unable to decide as to how fast or slow the travel should progress. Most of the time, the travel seems to be set at a rather normal speed, but at various points, its pace is slowed down due to filler and rather failed attempts at humor, which the pacing for me, it's not good at all. It just failed inevitably. So yeah, as started, much of the attempts at humor fail and either come across as awkward, predictable, immature, or suffered from botched timing. Some even remove suspense and tension within the film, since it barely seems to take itself seriously. Crash and Eddie provide some of the worst aspects at humor here, consisting of either gross out or toilet humor, which I don't like their gross out and toilet humor. That looks disgusting, and it was gross. Do something different for the humor for Crash and Eddie, man. On the topic of toilet humor, there is even one scene where actual animal feces are shown, which Eddie almost wicks under his submission that it is a clue for something until Bugs points out of otherwise, which, ew, that is so gross, and it makes me want to throw up like this. Blah, blah, blah. There is false advertising in the movie. Like, in some posters, it heavily advertised Scrat in space and him wearing a spacesuit, but in the actual film, he is only seen wearing it in 3 scenes. Really, man? We could have seen Scrat in a spacesuit for a little longer or more or something. I don't know, man. So yeah, despite being heavily advertised on movie posters, neither Brooke nor Shangri-La appeared until the final act of the film, and even then aren't even given proper screen time and characterization. Really? Why would you not give them introduction or characterization or more screen time? Give them more screen time, give them introduction, and give them more characterization, you dumb writers. Well, on the back of the Blu-ray and DVD calls it the best Ice Age movie when it's really not. Well, guess what, critic? It's not the best Ice Age movie. It's worse than Continental Drift, dumb critic. There are several cringeworthy, awkward, and disturbing shots present in the film, such as one where the low internal gravity of the UFO causes Scrat's skin to fall off and does expose his skeleton right before he pulls back up, as well as another in which he whips up his skin to reveal his nipples have been briefly transformed into acorns. Dear God, the skin, actually the skeleton for Scrat, it was terrifying, and the nipples turned to acorns. God, that is gross. That made me want to throw up, man. Stop doing that. That looks disgusting and terrifying. Well, the use of the aforementioned forgotten anniversary cliche feels rather forced, and it is supposed to be set up something so important when it comes to Benny and Ellie, but its payoff during their reflection on themselves, raising Peaches, and coming to terms with her future ends up being not too satisfying nor important. Well, the cliche for me, it feels like it's rushed and it feels like it's forced. I don't like it when it's forced. It needs the anniversary to something important for Manny and Ellie since their first meeting in Ice Age The Meltdown. Just do it already. Do not do it rushed. Just do it for about 10 or 15 minutes, man. God. The use of the wire reveal cliche runs into a similar issue as it never changes, nor develops the characters, nor even moves the plot forward to recap during the travel. Buck discovers he is being followed by the Dinobirds and is hiding this from the herd. And before they arrived at Geotopia, the herd, particularly Diego, discover what is really going on and realize that Buck was being dishonest about this. One would think this would be a setup, some sort of conflict between Buck and the herd, but this is not paid off in a real major way whatsoever. Really? Why would you keep on using the wire reveal cliche? We have seen the wire reveal cliche before. Man, stop using the wire reveal cliche and do something original, man. God. The subplot involving the romance between Sid and Brooke feels rather rushed. This is clear when Brooke proposes to Sid, even though they have only known each other for 12 in-universe minutes and thus barely had any chemistry. Say what you will about the fourth film, but at least Diego and Shiro's romance subplot was well written and natural, which I like the subplot between Diego and Shiro's romance way better than this romance, thus creating great chemistry between the two, despite it being pointless to the main plot of the movie. Really? Why would you do a romance between Sid and Brooke and made it rush. Just let them know each other for about a few minutes, for about 20 or 30 minutes. Just make it a little longer, not just rushed. God. It shares the problems of the previous 4 films featuring historical inaccuracies. For example, Buck remarks how an asteroid would hit the Earth every 100 million years as if it were some sort of tradition, even though the asteroid that eradicated the non-avian dinosaurs hit around 65 million years ago, while the prior mass extinctions weren't caused by asteroids hitting the Earth. Really? Why would you put some historical inaccuracies? Put the historical accuracy accurate. Do not put historical inaccuracies. It doesn't make any sense. The dialogue is extremely cheesy, particularly that, however, is a line from Buck, which that line, it felt like it's cringe to me, to be honest. I don't like this line. It felt like it's made me go to sleep, to be honest. It made me felt upset. So yeah, several characters from the previous 4 films, specifically Rudy and Ethan, no longer seem to exist anymore without any given reason whatsoever as to why it feels jarring and questionable. Really? Why would you wipe Rudy and Ethan out of existence? You gotta let us show what happened to Rudy and Ethan, man. I want to see what happened after the 4th film, man. God. The soundtrack by John Debney, despite being decent, is the weakest in the franchise, being inferior to that of the previous 4 films by David Newman, Ice Age, and John Powell, The Ice Age, The Meltdown, Dawn of the Dinosaurs, and Concept of Drift, which I'm mixed with this score and soundtrack, but it's decent, but it's the weakest, actually. I'm mixed with this soundtrack, so yeah. In a similar manner to how Seed of Chucky, Shrek the Third, Cars 2, Minions, and Pirates of the Caribbean, Dead Man Tell No Tales negatively affected their respective franchises, this film heavily damaged the reputation of both the Ice Age franchise and Blue Sky Studios, as solidified Blue Sky's reputation as a studio that was unable to let go of the Ice Age franchise due to how much the money the films made them. And this resulted in a company as a whole becoming widely unable to be taken seriously as a major animation studio by a large number of people, which I'm glad that it's got negative reviews, actually. It deserves to be box office bombed. It deserves it, because it's one of the worst movies I've seen. So yeah. Alright, so that's it for the bad qualities. Now let's get on to my final thoughts on this movie. Alright, so I gotta say, for Ice Age Collision Course, it was an okay movie, but it's rather a mixed bag and disappointing, and it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life from 2015. And this is worse than Ice Age Concept of Drift, and it's not better than Concept of Drift due to problems that I'm having. And yeah, might be the worst one. Actually, the worst one would be the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild, which is worse than that, which I'll review it after this. So yeah, so that is why I'm gonna give Ice Age Collision Course a 5 out of 10. It's an okay movie, but it's a rather mixed bag and disappointing, and it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life from 2015. So yeah. But anyways, thank you guys for watching for my review / rant on Ice Age Collision Course. What do you guys think of the movie, and what's your opinion on this movie? Well, for me, it was an okay movie, but it's rather a mixed bag and disappointing, and it's one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life from 2015. Alright, so my next review is going to be the Ice Age Adventures of Buck Wild. Actually, my next review, which will be a short review, and that's going to be Scrat Spaced Out. Why? Because it takes place after the events of Ice Age Collision Course, so that's why. So I'll review it after this, so yeah. But anyways, thank you guys for watching for my review / rant on Ice Age Collision Course. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace out, my boy!